Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the EO Masters play-in stage. We have officially reached the third play-in day, which means we are ready now for those knockouts. My name is still Xavier, also better known as Exodus. I'm joined here by Dino. How you doing, Dino?
I'm struggling to contain this hype right now. I mean, we're in the last stages of this play-in. It has been an amazing play-in so far. The last day was really back and forth with which teams could actually still get out and which teams could clutch that first place, clutch that second place. And it all comes down to 8 teams battling it out today to see which 4 teams advance into the main event. And it's just all gearing up to be some amazing games today, and I can't just wait to see the action.
Yeah, talking about action, we're gonna see some action because it is wow. Words are tough today. It is Raccoon versus Isuba, and both of these teams like to fight, and especially Raccoon, they like to play into the early game very aggressively. And you know you have some stuff to say about that one, Dino.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure. I'll call it a pleasure because it really was a pleasure
There
to
we go.
cast a couple of Raccoon games, this playing stage, and they just hit the gas pedal from the moment they load onto the rift until they're at your nexus. So there's really you don't get time to breathe as a caster, but also the enemy team doesn't get any time to think about the game. Every objective you're gonna go for, they'll be there to fight you over it, probably not even doing the dragon, just fighting you over the fact that dragon is up. And I'm interested to see how Isuba takes this pressure in the early game, because we've seen that sometimes their early game shines, but also sometimes they seem to fall a little bit behind.
Yeah, I mean, Suba is a team that their early game might go very well, or they pick a completely late game skilling draft where they are able to stall the game, but not always. We've seen it in the European Masters that some of their games they've been able to stall almost amazingly, and some of them they just got completely face rolled. So that's more or less the gameplay, or more or less something we can expect from Asuba. Now, we shouldn't undersell Raccoon here, because Raccoon almost looked like they went out of groups without losing a single game.
Yeah, Raccoon was the last frontrunner to get that undefeated group stage out of those 2 days, but in the end they dropped their last game, and it looked kind of shaky that game. I hope they could just brush it off for this best of three, and I think they will, because they just are about to leave everything on the line to get into that main stage. And if they're looking across to the other side, if those 2 teams look at each other, we have 2 clear-cut favorites to take over control in the early game. On one side, you have Ploxy, the jungler from Raccoon, that is really vital in unlocking his mid laner and unlocking his top or bot lane to actually play the map. And then you have Jeski. There's a lot to say about this jungler from Isuba, but it basically comes down to the fact that he's a very aggressive early game jungler that really tries to take the game by storm.
Talking about this aggressive early game, this is something we've come to expect from Raccoon, and it is something that Asuba has been able to deal with hit or miss, mostly hit in the playing stages, but they also have been able to, like, I remember games where Asuba was 10k gold behind at 15 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that. I don't want anybody thinking I'm blaming Asuba here, but it has happened before. I've also seen games where Asuba was that much gold behind and actually won the game. So is Asuba, is their coin gonna land today? And if it's gonna land, how will they do it? Is it gonna be just like they need a certain draft to make this game work? Or is it more adapting their play style towards Raccoon, a team? I mean, both of these teams haven't met each other. So we have a lot of question marks for the audience, for us, and I think for the players as well.
Yeah, and you'll see that in the first game. It all for those team also depends on how they're gonna attack the map from the beginning, and we're gonna see them actually trying each other out. I think in the top lane we're down for a brawl. I mean, Pascali always looks for it, and Robocop isn't one to back off from an early exchange. So we'll see them going blow for blow probably. We'll see Ploxy and Jeski trying to figure each other out, and then when you look further down the map, you have those 2 bot lanes that don't really get that much spotlight in their respective teams. but they're actually really decent. I mean, S1D is a playmaking support. If you give him the pike, if you give him the blitzcrank, he really goes for those early plays. But on the other side, you have Danny and Rufus that are actually showing up really big. They also have a pocket pick. Well, not really a pocket pick, but they have a Zaya Racoon that's really strong, that could actually take over control of the lane. So it's yeah, it's going to shape up to be an amazing first game, and it's going to mean so much for the series, depending on how they approach this game and who comes out on top.
And talking about first game, we are heading into the pick and ban phase right now. I do have to disclose with our viewers that Wukong has been disabled due to a recently found out bug. So Wukong is not eligible for plays here at the EU Masters in the playing stage, at least for today. So first picks, or especially first bans here, Syndra being banned away alongside Raccoons. I mean, Syndra has been one of those champions that Asuba can flex pretty aggressively. So they can say we can flex to mid, we can flex to bot. We'll actually play for those level or item 1, item 2 power spikes.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen all of the games of these two teams, those first 3 bans, you might say Syndra and Ziggs are bans towards the mid lane, and then Talia is a ban towards the jungle. But nothing is as true and nothing is as on the nose as it seems, because Syndra is a flex for Isuba to go bot. Ziggs and Talia have both been played in the bot lane by Raccoon, so they're actually making sure that there's no funny stuff going on in the bot lane. The mid laner Pantheon from Cole also gets banned out, and now we're looking at the first pick for Raccoon, and they instantly lock this LeBlanc.
Okay, the instantly locking of LeBlanc means that Raccoon already has a game plan they want to play out. So this is, I actually like the insta-locks. It reminds me of the tactics that old Cloud9 used to do, is where you just immediately lock in, giving your opponent the least time to formulate a game plan, to know what's going on. Especially when both of these teams haven't met each other. I think that might give that little mental edge that brings it over in a game like this. Isuba responds with the Varus and Renekton.
Yeah, and the LeBlanc isn't only an insta-lock, it's also a takeaway from the champion pool of Random, who plays a little LeBlanc, but he also has Azir up his sleeve, so we might see him go there. He even played Ornn mid once, but that's already banned out. The Renekton is an interesting one, because Renekton for Raccoon has also seen time in the mid lane. Maybe Asuba can also flex this, so this draft is just going to be a back and forth of them picking things away from each other and actually hinting towards those flexes. But Raccoon is going for a clearer game plan, so it seems.
And talking about the clearer game plan, it is the Lee Sin being locked in. Standard jungler here, not too much to say about that one. It does mean that you can scale a little bit sooner, or at least as soon as you get ahead with Lee Sin. If he, for example, has his jungle item, contesting dragons will be quite difficult if you do not have a very clear and cut counter pick towards their jungler. So alongside with the Thresh, I am looking more towards the well-known mid and jungle 2v2 rotations that Raccoon likes to bring out alongside the early game, or at least alongside the transition from early to mid, where they try and snowball their game and play very tempo heavy.
Yeah, and I really like this Lissandra from Random coming out. It looks like Isuba is attacking the map how teams haven't really done until now. If we look at Raccoon's match history, Pascali plays 2 champions. Like in every game he plays, he's either on set or he's on the Aatrox. They ban out the set themselves because for Isuba it's a flex pick in top, mid, and bot lane. And then you see them lock in the Renekton and instantly ban the Aatrox out. So now the top lane is pinched for Pascali and needs to go into something new, into that Renekton probably that's going to be in the top lane, because Lissandra is locked in as a clear counter for that LeBlanc in the mid lane.
You still have some counters available, of course, in the top lane. What this is an interesting one. Isuba locking in Tahm Kench, meaning that yes, you probably have a lethality virus, but it also does mean that you can kind of go for more safe and more aggressive bot lane, because you always have the Kench there who can help you out. I'm actually very surprised that we don't see a starving Senna being played by both teams, because she is still open. And no AD carry has been locked in the bot lane. So this is probably, I don't want to say a first, but this is very rare at least, or how the meta is formed at the moment. She did get a little nerf. So, well, I say a little.
The thing about that, if we touch on the Senna build in general, Isuba plays it. They play a lot of time carry Senna actually in the bot lane, but Raccoon really doesn't. And when we look at Raresh, he has Aphelios, he has Varus as his 2 priority picks. they took the Varus themselves, Isuba, and they ban out the Aphelios. So they have a really clear draft strategy here, where in the second rotation, if top and AD carry weren't picked, they would pinch those pools. And now they force Varesh up until his Kaisa, and they force Pascali actually on tank duty, which is something we haven't seen all tournament long.
The thing is with the tank duty Pascali, it fits very well into this team comp. So you have the Maokai, who actually is just an engager, who is actually a very good peeler for the Kaisa, because Kaisa is our late game win conditions from Raccoon. It's kind of the backup plan where you say, hey, in case our tempo game goes awry and we scale into that late, we have a team that can actually peel for Kaisa, and if Kaisa gets 3 to 4 items, it's gonna be done for Isuba, because Isuba, they need somebody to jump onto Kaisa, and yes, they have clear and cut engage with the Cataclysm on Jarvan, but you need to get to her. And I think with the Thresh and with the Maokai, this is going to be quite difficult.
Yeah, and if you just look across the board, Asuba plays a defensive style in the bot lane, in the mid lane probably. Bot lane is kind of up in the air depending on how they trade, but mid Lissandra is not really expected to have a lot of prio in that lane. LeBlanc should be able to shove it out and actually pressure Lissandra back. But then if you look towards the top lane, Renekton can really clear a wave fast, can be up in your face if you're the Maokai and try to push you back. So it's really up to the junglers to look and see which lanes are attackable in the early game, because they're both playing very good early game junglers to actually gank and take control of a lane, to then unlock players like Pascali to actually go for a flank, or like Robocop on his Renekton to go for a flank. So I really like both drafts. I think they both had a clear plan. Raccoon hitting that gas pedal early with the Lee Sin, with the LeBlanc, going for that 2v2 outplays in the mid lane, and then Isuba answering with a lot of thought put in their draft, trying to get picks away from Raccoon and actually drafting themselves a very strong team fight.
And talking about team fights, so both of these teams are going to go into a certain stage in the game where they want to team fight, but I do believe Raccoon is like if the jack of all trades at the moment, their team comp, as in it does a lot of things well, but doesn't excel in one particular thing. So it also means that their power spikes and their time to, or their prime time to shine, is kind of spread out throughout the entire game. So there's never a time in the game where Raccoon's team comp is particularly weak. On the other hand, Asuba's team comp, I do feel, has a little bit more of that, where there are certain stages where, hey, I'm looking, of course, at the early game from Renekton. But if they get behind, yes, Renekton and Jarvan are useful, same goes for Lissandra, but there's not going to be much they can do contest-wise about certain objectives.
Yeah, and Suba has a few things going for them in their comp. They're actually their base scaling and their tank stats are pretty high, so they should be able to contest a lot of fights in the early game and in the mid game. And depending on what build Danny goes for, because on Varus we see two builds at the moment. You have the on-hit build that's looking towards those late game team fights to dish out a lot of damage, and then you have that lethality build to really take control of the early game. Depending on which build he goes, they might still have late game insurance, but even on-hit Varus isn't really on the same level as a Kaisa, as long as Kaisa has enough opportunity to reposition in a fight. What I find really interesting in general is you have this Tahm Kench that has a save button basically built into his kit, but once LeBlanc is so far ahead that LeBlanc can just blow up Danny in the blink of an eye, most Tahm Kenches won't be able to save you as long as you come from out of vision. So it's gonna come down to who gets control of the game and gets a gold lead in the early stages, and how they execute the team fights around Dragon, around Rift Herald, to see which team comp actually outscales the other one, because there's no clear-cut favorite here. There's no one really coming with a game plan late or early game. It's just good picks, good matchups. The mid jungle was prioritized by Raccoon, and Isuba at the same time just prioritized having champs that could deal with pressure and having strong team fights and good just in general matchups for their jungler and for their mid laner.
And talking about picks and bans. I mean, talking about picks rather in the game, vision is key here. So both of these teams want to set up very decent, very early on. They want to set up vision lines. In the early game, yes, we all know how vision works there. But when you transition into a mid game, and especially like looking at tempo game, I'm expecting both of these teams are going to constantly try and contest the vision line alongside alongside the side of the map where there are neutral objectives. Or for example, if you have a dragon, you kind of want to shove up that bot lane vision line so you make sure that, yes, you can go for some rotation bot-wise, and where you can actually go for maybe a pick or a play. Because if you go for a pick, then yes, you have a team that does kind of okay in it, but they're not like you have a hacker with 5,000 movement speed who will come at your face, and as soon as you spot them, it's too late. So they need that vision. They need to find some way to make either Isuba come out of the shell, or they need to find a way to force Asuba into an unfavorable bottleneck position.
Yeah, and for those who are wondering why we're stuck on this champion select screen for so long, we're having a brief game pause. These things happen, of course. So we're waiting for the game to actually start, and this gives us more time to touch upon these team comps, which isn't that easy because a lot of these, if you look at both comps, but especially at Raccoon, a lot will come down to execution. Lee Sin will have a really hard time in the late game to actually impact team fights in I would say, well, I would say in a great manner, because if you go for an insect play, who are you kicking back into your team? You might want to go for Danny. Tam Kench is probably going to sit right next to him because that's Tam Kench's duty. He doesn't even need to look at his mid laner because Random can self-peel with the ulti. And then you have two front lines that aren't really the ones that you want to kick into your team. So for Ploxy, he's really going to look towards that early game to make his Lee Sin pick shine and make sure that they're ahead enough for him to make those plays. On the other side, you have a really defensive setup with big potential for Lissandra and for Jarvan, but it's really hard to get picks onto Ploxy, onto Cole, because those are two slippery champions as well. So it's really interesting how these two drafts played out. And yeah, I'm just anxious waiting to see what happens in game. But yeah, so are the viewers at home. So
I'm guessing there. I mean, this has been quite a very enjoyable EU Masters,
here we
actually,
go.
because these teams have done so well in their groups. And as you said already, here we go. Raccoon versus Asuba. It is a best out of 3, and the loser of this series will lose their chance to get into the EU Master spot.
Yeah, and the good thing now for both teams is, even if you lose this game, it's not over yet, right? In the group stages, it's really every game counts way harder. Every game counts towards your score to actually be one of those top 2 teams. Now you have the chance to, after a game, if it goes a little bit bad against a team, you have more chances to adapt. You'll have at least a second game. If you win that one, you go to that decider game. So it's really good to see them actually attack the drafts in 2 different ways, because they can still switch it up if need be. For Raccoon, they did something that's really out of character. Normally, they secure Pascali's matchup very fast on blue side, and if they're red side, they wait for that counter pick. Now they told Pascal, okay, we're gonna carry for you. You're our tank. You're our main engage tool. Just make sure you don't fall too far behind. Make sure you do the right moves. Go for a flank. Go for that CC on the carries, and we'll do the rest. So it's really interesting to see them actually adopt in the first draft of the game. And if that doesn't work out, you can still fall back on putting Pascali on a bruiser for the next game.
Yeah, so definitely both of the teams have some leeway in their next pick and ban. And looking a little bit at the jungle path thing, I think it's interesting that we do see a standard buff to buff roots. It does mean that these junglers might meet each other at the bot side. And will we see a contest over Scuttle, Dino?
It's Raccoon. So yeah, Raccoon contests everything in the early game, and that's what I like about this team. They're down to fight you over anything you have. What I like about Rarish and S1D, they push in the wave and they try to get that early bounce off, and now they're going to get vision in the enemy jungle. They spot that blue is gone, so they know that Jarvan probably is the 2 buff start and is clearing in that bottom side of the jungle. Now they can actually look to let the wave bounce towards them, freeze it into place, and let Lee Sin, let Ploxy try to gang that bot lane. But then again, you're up against a Tam Kench who has that Devour, so I think they're gonna look for that mid 2v2. This seems the most obvious gang path, and we also already see Lee Sin going over there.
And we actually might see a gank here in the mid lane. This Random getting out with that E from Lissandra. A little bit too much excitement there in the mid lane because nothing really happened, but it does show that Random is quite strong and very persistent. He does not want to give up this wave just yet.
No, it's an explosive 2v2. I mean, once one of those laners in the mid lane gets ahead, the counter matchup doesn't really work that well. What we're seeing in the top lane right now is what we expect. Renekton should be able to pressure Maokai very early on. And what I like about Jiski, he is actually counter jungling Ploxy, taking his jungle away in the top side. And that also puts him in position. Once this wave gets under tower, they can actually try to look for a dive onto the Maokai, which doesn't really seems likely, but it's actually possible with those two champs dishing out so much damage in the early game.
Yeah, and Asuba already, via rotation-wise and via better jungler pathing, they're actually having almost a 1k gold lead at 4 minutes, and they have not really forced anything. Everybody still has their summoner up, so you can say this is one of the most tranquil early games we've had, and already such a gold lead. It's quite impressive here, as Pascal might get dove here by Jeski. But his Ploxy here with the re-engage finds the Q, lands the flag and drag from Jeski, but Ploxy cannot use the follow-up, flashes over the wall though, and it is first blood for Asuba. Can Ploxy get out? Because you need to get out to make sure this play doesn't become worse for you. Robocop says, that's enough for us, guys. We had the first blood, and I feel that this is a little bit better on the Asuba side.
Yeah, kudos are due. It isn't Pascal's first game on the Maokai. He put the sapling in the bush that he might actually get ganked from by Jarvan, spotting out Jeski going over there. And then it's Raccoon. They see Jeski in their jungle. Instantly, Pascal flashes, goes for that twisted advance to get onto Jeski, try to snare him in place. In the end, they don't get the first blood, which is kind of sad. But they get 3 flashes out from Asuba and only traded for 2. Cole is still sitting pretty on his flash. Random used flash, used teleport. So I want to see Ploxy try to get something out of this mid lane deficit of summoners, because that might actually unlock LeBlanc in that mid lane to make plays all over the map.
Talk about plays being made over the map. Ploxy here finds himself in a 2v1 situation as a flag and drag does not connect, but Ploxy tries to test the waters a bit more. And this is very interesting because, as you said already, this is Asuba with that early game aggression right now, and especially with the dominance. They just have a showing, as in, they're almost like wild animals saying, we're here, and if you want to fight us, you're going to get beaten down quite heavily.
It happened in the draft pretty early on. They locked in Lee Sin, they locked in LeBlanc, kind of showing their hand what they were trying to do. And the reaction of Isuba is great. They have this Jarvan. A lot of people instantly go for the Rek'Sai because it has such good counter ganks against Lee Sin, and you can track him easily through the jungle. But in the Lee Sin Jarvan matchup, the one that gets ahead can actually invade so easily. Jeski did this for himself. He saw that Ploxy was trying to set something up in the mid lane, just took the topside jungle while the hook lands in the bot lane, but they're just going to trade a little bit of skills. So now Jarvan has this prio in the game, is a little bit stronger, and he can just start up this dragon on vision, and I think Ploxy will look to gank mid.
I might look for a gank here, but I don't think Isuba is super comfortable as in taking the dragon solely by the jungler. The bot lane has used their prio to comfort him a little bit more in the river. That's the first dragon going to Asuba as well, and they are already, I want to say, firmly in the lead, which might be an overstatement, as our bot lane gets hooked. I think Rufus is just fine with that one. So, back to what I was saying. They are in the lead. Saying they're firmly in the lead might be a bit of an overreaching here, but if this drags on, that lead is only going to grow and grow and grow, and Raccoon is going to run into a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, and they're just making the proactive moves. Asuba is, and mainly Jeski, with help from his solo laners, is making Ploxy's life really miserable at the moment. Ploxy is running into an empty jungle almost always everywhere it goes, and Ploxy is such a vital part in the chances of Raccoon in the early game to actually get those leads they so desperately need because of their playstyle, fighting over everything. So it's really good to see Asuba have a plan. Not only in the draft, but also in game to attack Ploxy, because he, in the early game, is the guy that's going to make all the moves happen. We see a standard rotation up to top side. You take the dragon in bot, rotate your bot lane to top side so you can actually go for that Rift Scuttle. And now it's up to Raccoon to either contest the Rift Herald, or maybe try to make a play on other lane so they can get a point of contention somewhere on the map.
I think contesting this Herald might be very difficult, if not borderline impossible for them. Just because, look, it is Raccoon. They might try, but I think this might actually be suicide if you go in for the Herald here. Because look at the mini-map. You have 4 members of Raccoon actually having prio on that top side and actually making sure that they can go for it and they can fight if need be, while the bot lane from Raccoon is still in their respective bottom lane as well. So this is Raccoon already being forced into a very bad and very tempo-losing position here. And they're just going to push for more plates as well.
Yeah, Raccoon gives up the Rift Herald, and honestly, they should. You were right, but I'm just so hyped on Raccoon fighting over everything. I've seen it before, where they take fights where you think like, why are you even fighting there? But then they come out on top. But this is a good movement. You know you're gonna give up that top prio. Pascal is actually playing far enough back to not take too much damage, so you're trying to get some money into that Kaisai, who has been putting up decent last hits, has been putting up decent farm numbers, and might actually be safe to scale to the late game. Pascal is going way too far forward here, and he might actually die on the start once Rift Herald crashes.
Yeah, and he needs to get out pretty fast. Uses the passive from Pascal to heal himself a little bit up more. But this is a good dive. The ultimate means that he might survive just yet. Jake, he gets the kill. And that means that this first third blood will also go to Isuba. Yes, 1 and 2, but just look at a gold lead. They are 2.5k gold ahead for Raccoon, and we're only up for 10 minutes. There's still 10 or at least 9 more plays up for Red. I think they're going to get the second charge even. So this means it goes in and they're not pushing for the second turret, which, as I think, is the right call here, because that would be a little bit too greedy. But Raccoon needs to find a way to really stop Asuba in their tracks and really stop the well-executed rotations.
It all comes down to Pascali. In the beginning, I see him far back in that lane. I think, okay, he respects the pressure they have. He respects the fact that if they take down 2.5 plates and they put the Rift Herald, the towers is going to go down. Give up the XP, give up the farm, and be able to soak the XP later, or actually stop the Rift Heralds from getting a second charge off. But then he just goes forward underneath that tower, trying to posture aggressively and make sure that once the Rift Herald charges, he might be able to kill it. But then Jarvan comes from behind. Maybe it didn't really expect Jeski to come from behind. Maybe he was going. He thought Jeski might come through the lane, and yeah, he just gets picked off. They lose a tower. He gives a kill away for it. And in the bot lane, okay, you're pushing those plays, but you only get 2 plates off because Robocop can play forward again, and they're just behind on the play, behind in gold, and they really need to find a way to stem the tide and make sure that they don't lose everything, and get this early game comp of Asuba rolling.
Talking about the comp getting rolling, we do see that on the bot lane, Raresh there, he is struggling with the Kaisa at the moment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Kaisa is a late game scaling champion, but he only has that one item, and it is stacking as well. That tier has not been stacked whatsoever, so it is going to take a while before it's actually going to do damage in fights. Talking about doing damage in fights, LeBlanc here looking for random. Can he find the chains that connect? Pascal, not Pascali there, it's Jeski, of Bloxy rather, trying to find the engage, trying to find the 2v1. But it's not enough. Raccoon setting up plays, setting up rotations, but every time Asuba is too comfortable to just say, hey, we are not falling for this one. We're just going to stick to our game plan, as they're starting to get Dragon right now.
Random played that perfectly. He just played back, was in range, and they're going to go on Collier.
Yeah, I think Collie here really needs to get out. The Pluxy Q is not enough. Good little cleanse there from Kohol means he will be able to get out. And this Raccoon trying to find the fight, trying to re-engage here. Pascali with the 4-man knockup, and that's a big one. Teleport coming out from Robocop. The box is being used to zone Robocop away, and Raccoon immediately turning onto the Crocodile. He's able to get out, but he forces his flash, and that's both summoners for the top laner from Asuba gone. And I think Raccoon can actually turn this around if they're trying to siege this turret.
The wave clear from Lissandra was just enough to kill those minions and the numbers on Asuba. There's too many people alive for them to actually try to posture aggressive. But it's a good play. I mean, you're giving up the dragon, sure. They go all out on Kole. He still has his cleanse. He uses his cleanse and his flash to actually disengage from that fight. And then Pascal is just a little bit faster on a trigger finger. TPs in first, uses the ulti. And the sad part for Robocop Cop is he comes in, but instantly gets snared by that ulti, so he can't really affect that team fight fast enough for his team to get the upper hand, even though he has a lead in that top lane.
Yeah, leading on top lane right now is not going to help them as much because we are still looking towards a jungle difference that Raccoon and Asuba have right now. Asuba's Jakey has so strong because you are that Jarvan, you have that jungle item completed along with a stopwatch. So that means you can actually go in for these aggressive plays. You can actually search for, here we're going to go for a maybe overreaching with the Cataclysm. But if it works, we are on our way to snowball, and if it doesn't work, we always have a sort of fail-safe. And talking about being a fail-safe, here is the ultimate. They are getting dove here, and this is one member of Raccoon also being taken out already. Rawresh survives, but has to flash away. Beautiful insect there from Ploxy, but is it enough to save this turret? I don't think it is. Danny is taking the turret aggro, and that's some bad communication from Asuba, as yes, they were able to take down 3 members, but they also lost their AD carry, and their health bars are quite low. No neutral objective available. What is their next play here, Dino?
You just need to make sure that after this play you actually get vision down as well, which they're actually doing. We see Jeski there in the jungle getting a control ward down and a normal ward, pushing that vision line up so they can actually see the LeBlanc trying to flank a little bit sooner. So they really force Raccoon backwards here and push their vision line towards the towers of Raccoon so they can set up better for those dives. It looked really well, and then the point you touched upon, Danny actually getting third aggro there and Kola going in to secure 1 kill, maybe stem the tide a little bit, but still if they keep making plays like this, it can go bad very fast, and Rawresh needs to be very careful, at least S1D's there on Lantern duty, because that could have went wrong pretty fast, I would say.
Yeah, right now Asuba looking for a second Rift Herald, and a second Rift Herald might be very important. Ooh, random! The Observer was almost just in time to show us there. He is going very low. That means that no teleport or flash available. Raccoon kind of needs to capitalize on this, because if they lose this mid lane turret, they are in a position to fight a 4v5, and yes, they're 3k gold behind, but 4v5s with the number advantage, you can actually make sure that you force a play. You don't need to get a kill, but you need to make sure you just win a fight and force everybody from Asuba away from objectives.
I think it's quite clear by now that Raccoon is trying to scale into this game because they're not really making the aggressive plays that we're used to seeing from them. And we see Jarvan going in on Lee Sin. That might actually go wrong for Ploxy. He gets saved by Raresh. He can use his safeguard there to go towards him. What I was trying to say, that Rift Herald was up when they made that play up on the top laner, forcing random upon the mid laner that was in top, forcing random to back there. But then they don't go for that Rift Herald. They don't feel comfortable enough yet. They don't think that even with 5 man, with that 1 man advantage, that they can take down the Rift Herald. And this is going to cost them their mid lane because they're just instantly taking Rift Herald Asuba and using it mid to get that tower down and actually make sure that Raccoon doesn't have that safety of that tier 1 mid lane turret.
Yeah, and Raccoon actually losing quite a lot here because Shelly is gonna get another dunk, and if they're not careful, they're gonna lose this tier 2 as well. It is Asuba just continuously out-rotating and just being a little bit faster, as we see a flank from Scully here. Does find a triple root. Can he peel for the rest of his team? And is immediately random going into a stasis, trying to stall the fight even longer. But 2 members of Asuba are being cut. Rufus eats up Danny, but it's not enough. That's 1 kill going to Raresh, and that does mean that Asuba is losing this fight. Yes, they took down the 2 turrets in the mid lane, but they are losing their carries and they're losing quite a bit of gold, which is exactly what Raccoon wants to, as they're starting the dragon now. Raccoon have lost quite a lot in this mid to early game, but are slowly coming back with this fight.
it all begins with Pascali finding that flank there, going in from behind, using his ultimate there to actually lock up so many members and give his team breathing room to approach the fight in a front to back manner. And then Asuba peels off to attack Kole, but it takes way too long. And in the meantime, Ploxy gets a second flank off and can just go upon that bot lane of Danny and Rufus, kick them back, and that controls the fight enough for them to get more kills out of it, get a little bit of get that gold back, but more importantly, they're delaying the Dragon Soul of Isuba by taking the first Ocean Dragon away and making sure that they actually have time for this Kaisa to scale up into the match and into the matchup to maybe use their late game Kaisa as a win condition around those next objectives.
Yeah, the previous fight, the more I'm looking at it, was pretty huge for Raccoon. Because if they lost that one as well, that probably would have been the nail in the coffin. Because then Asuba's at soul point, they're way too strong. They scale up to, or they're at a certain power spike where Raccoon can follow. But right now, they've not stopped their tempo dead from Asuba, but they've made sure they have a chance of clawing back.
Yeah, I like Jesky going for the steal there with his flag, trying to get the bigger wraith down there, but it in the end it doesn't really pay off. And we see that Ploxy and Kole are always shadowing each other. Kole is pushing sideways by himself, and Ploxy is shadowing to see if someone goes up that they can maybe make an aggressive play and try to blow someone up before reinforcements arrive. But Asuba knows that game plan, and they're doing exactly the same thing, but then with Random and Jesky in the bot lane. And they need to watch out Raccoon mid, because that tower isn't healthy enough, and they might actually get dove between two towers.
If they're not careful here, they really need to make sure that they do not get caught out by Asuba. Asuba immediately going for the synchronized recall. They did lose their top lane turret, and because they're going for the 5-man recall, they want to reset. They want to make sure they are full on with resources. They have vision set up and want to push down the vision line that Raccoon has so beautifully built up around Baron right now, because Baron is their accelerator for Asuba. It is the catalyst that will make them win the game, or at least make them win the mid game and the siege.
Sieging is in the composition of Asuba is also a very hard thing to do. You mainly only have Varus, but his range isn't that big, so he can't really free fire at towers from a long range. So that Baron is going to do so much for that composition. They're normally built around this team fight and the safety that Random has to peel for himself. So they're not really built to siege down lanes. But once you get Baron buff, your minions just take over for you. So they're really trying to posture aggressively around this Baron, push the vision line again up into Raccoon's jungle. So Raccoon has to blind face check into bushes, into vision of them, so that they can play the picking game and then actually close out a fight, maybe get 1 or 2 kills, and then go for the Baron to unlock that siege potential they so desperately need.
Okay, let's take a quick look at the item builds here, because one thing that really stands out for me is a Thresh going for a first item Mikhails. That means that you really want your carry to do damage at all times. Yes, it might be self-prevalent, but of course you have a Kaisa and she already has cleanse, and you still build a Mikhails. Dida, is this overkill, or is this just saying Raccoon, we're playing to our strong suit, we're playing to our game plan?
It might be a little bit of overkill, because not only Kaisa and not only Raresh has that cleanse, but also Kole has cleanse. So he might actually be looking to cleanse someone else if Lissandra goes for an ulti upon somebody else, or it opens up Kaisa to cleanse maybe a Varus engage with the change of corruption there. He might actually be able to cleanse that, but he's gonna get engaged on by Jarvan, and you can't cleanse that.
No, that's a good Cataclysm, but the Killer Instinct is able to save Raresh just now. Here comes the ultimate from Pascali, trying to zone away the rest of the team from Asuba. That's a good pull, but it is on Rufus now. Don't think Raccoon can capitalize on this just yet. They are trying to stall here, but look at the flank. Look at what Kone is doing here. He's trying to find those weaker players, trying to find if Danny is able to be one-popped, or to be insta-popped rather, by Asuba's mid laner here, Random, trying to zone away the rest of Raccoon's team. And Raccoon need to be careful because they're actually quite split. Asuba going for the mid lane push. Can they do it in time? They're trying to find Raresh. He has the cleanse available. He will actually go out. And here is a dive from Asuba. But they are so deep in the base from Raccoon. If Raccoon wins this one, this might be a very big turnaround. Random going down. Then he's still alive, but Raresh isn't, as Raccoon is trying to collapse on Asuba, who's still so deep into their enemy base. They're trying to clear the wave so the turret does more damage so nobody can actually hide. And it's Pascali. He is the tanky Maokai, and this tree will not go down just yet. Rufus will be taken down alongside with Jakey, and this means that Raccoon has won this team fight, and only Robocop survives. Only if Earl doesn't get here the tags on him. I think he does gets the chain, gets the flash, and one more auto attack will do it. A clean ace for Raccoon.
I was about to say the team fight went very bad for Isuba because he tanked tower for so long and actually dove too far, and there was no way back because Raccoon collapsed behind them. But then I was about to say the team fight might not have been that great because carries didn't really pick up shutdown money. We saw Pascali there getting a shutdown, but then Cole in the end flashing aggressively forward and now posturing as well to make sure that they don't instantly contest this Baron, coming up big for his team, and he'll probably just get out here. I don't know if this Baron is pretty risky, so I'm just gonna throw it back to you because this might actually end up in a fight.
Yeah, this is, I don't want to say a Hail Mary play, but definitely one of the most dangerous Barons I've seen here so far. And it's immediately Random going in, zones 5 people with the ultimate. That's a lot of damage alongside the Cataclysm. And it is slice and dice and decimation from Asuba as they're able to take down 3 members of Raccoon. And this is devastating for Raccoon. Asuba, they don't need the Baron anymore. They can just siege mid now because they know they have the reset and the death timer is available from Raccoon.
They don't need the Baron, but they have the Baron. Jeski comes up clutch there, actually steals that Baron away, and I like Raccoon trying to translate that one teamfight win into a bigger objective, but it was so risky, and that's just the way Raccoon plays the game, right? They fight you over everything. They want to fight you over that Baron. They think they might actually have enough time to close it out. Cole is trying to run interference there. He actually interferes random, but he's on top of Ward. He's getting pings on his face. He needs to run right now.
He did sweep it, but I think Asuba knows the location of Kobe. He's trying to get out. Pascali again with the flank, and this is Asuba once again. That is an unfortunate blast go, because now you've just split up Asuba, and will this be their downfall? Random once again going into the Glacial Tomb, and Rayharsh gets the kill. Asuba, they aren't on soul point, but they need to give up this dragon because they can't contest it anymore. Mid lane inhibitor is gone for Raccoon, but these flanks from the mid laner and from the top laner from Raccoon keep winning fights and keep giving them the opportunity to claw back in this game.
Yeah, there has been a lot of moments where you think, okay, this is probably the point where Raccoon falls too far behind, or they actually get a little bit broken, as they would say in the game. But Raccoon is there to fight you over everything, and it opens up small opportunities that normally wouldn't really be there, like that blasting cone going so badly for Random, actually keeping him inside the jungle. He tries to use his claw to get over the wall, but instantly gets snared, can't finish up the skill. And they try to go for a pick on Cole. I was really scared for Cole's life, but apparently I should have been scared for Asuba getting caught there, because they just go down, give over the dragon, and Raccoon is trying to stay alive in this game and grasping at every straw they can get from Asuba.
I can already see that Ravesh's damage is scaling more and more and more, because in these fights he's starting to do more and more DPS. Pascali is getting tankier as well. Bloxy is only Sin duty at the moment. So if the peel for Raccoon keeps being on this level, Asuba, yes, they're winning battles, but they need to win battles faster and faster and faster, and they need to be able to close out the game because they are up against a timer at the moment. Yes, you have an on-hit lethal tempo Varus, but I don't think you can scale up as well against the Kai'Sa right now, because yeah, Blade of Doom King is being finished, but is it enough? This is a big wave, by the way, in this bot lane, and Raccoon doesn't have the wave clear at the moment to stall them out.
they might have the wave clear, but it's still Baron buffed. And now we see a beautiful glacial path from Random trying to go in forward, but he might be too far. He needs to use the Frozen Tomb on himself.
Yeah, use it on himself and just goes out to Xonius. Was enough. Raresh in the Cataclysm. Is this the last song for Raccoon in this game? It actually might be, but they are winning the fight, and this Raresh doing so much damage. Minions are going to the base. Raccoon needs to be careful with that one, but they're looking for an engage. They're looking to win this fight. They have the numbers advantage. Yes, Raccoon is split, but they need that one chain, that one little tag to actually win the game. That is a very deep dive there as Rokup takes the kill on Ploxy. Right now, S1D is currently in the golden post, but he can't get out because of a flash. This inhibitor will not go down just yet. Raccoon is fighting it and defending it as much as they can. Is this hook gonna land? No, it isn't. Pascali going in with the root. He is that tree that is unknockable. That will not go down by any form or means. And is Koei picking up yet another kill. 13 and 12. It is the first time in the game where Raccoon has had one kill up against Isuba, but their base is, I want to say, broken open.
Asuba needs to change up their game plan for the coming minutes because they always pick these fights deep into the enemy base, and Raccoon's team fighting is actually very good. I'm surprised that with their comp, if you look at both comps, with how far behind they were, that they're actually coming up ahead in most of those fights. We see Pascali go down very low, but he's in base. He just runs back to the fountain, gets that healing, and once he comes back full HP, they turn the fight around again, and they actually pick up more kills on the back end of it. So Asuba needs to maybe try to calm down a little bit and set up their sideways better. They still have towers to take in the top side. You can send Robocop with his TP that's coming up soon. You can send him to that bot lane to actually split the map, because I think they need to break up this 5v5 of Raccoon, and once they break it up, they might actually have a better chance at actually breaking the base and finishing out this game.
Yeah, Raccoon is fighting for their lives right now, and they just need to stall. So Asuba needs to find a way to really make sure they get that upper hand. They make sure they get that Storm Ram in the base, because one fight and actually win the game. And I don't think that's the case for Raccoon, because look at the turrets. Raccoon has only been able to take down the side lane turrets, and just one is not enough to really storm through the base of Asuba. They have a little bit leeway to play aggressively, and to make sure they make these dangerous or 50-50 plays.
I like that Raresh is feeling it right now. He's playing very forward on that Kaisa. He has his 3 core items finished, which means that all his skills will be upgraded, and he's using that pressure to actually play forward. He still has his flash up, still has his cleanse up, and if he can bait another hard engage upon him, he might actually use his killer instinct to reposition and win the fight for Raccoon. And if you look at the sideways, Raccoon actually sets them up beautifully. The bot lane is just pushing in. The top lane is fine, even though Random just came from there, so it will probably push in Isuba's favor there. And now we're just looking at an all-out 5v5 brawl in the mid lane, because that dragon is gonna spawn and nobody's willing to give it up, but they go on to Pascali.
And look how Pascali is just being chunked down so aggressively. Yes, he's in the Cataclysm, healing up quite bad. But it is Coley who was trying to find the flank, but it was too far to back up his team. Now it's a 4v5 Raccoon against Asuba. Yes, you have a maybe flanking LeBlanc. I don't think he has actually been spotted by Asuba. So this is...
Oh, he was on top of the ward. He's spotted.
He is spotted right now. This is Raccoon's time to actually stop this play. Is Random going to be able to find Coley there? He is immediately being glacial tombed. Cleanses out, but can he escape? Flash being used as well. Raresh going in there with the ultimate, and Isuba plays it slow but plays it perfectly, because the only thing they want right now is objectives. You don't need kills. You need to find a way to make sure you break open the base and you get another objective, which at this point will be the dragon.
Pascali goes down a little bit too fast there. He eats the Chains of Corruption by Varus and actually gets taken down. It's Ploxy. He's probably going to go for the steal, but he's not going to get it. Great stuff there from Jeski, securing that dragon, putting them on soul point. But still, Raccoon isn't out of this game. I mean, we have been in this state where Raccoon is on the back foot for so long right now, but they keep picking fights, and not every fight is a win for them, but they also get a lot of wins out of some of those fights. And I mean, Pascali got engaged upon so early in that fight and almost even survived at the end, just using that sap magic to get back, get his HP bar back up. And we're now looking towards that Baron, it's going to be a tough fight because you have Super Minions pushing down the mid lane. But knowing Raccoon, they're just going to take this fight, and they might even win it if they outplay Asuba there.
Yeah, and as you said already, it actually surprised me that Pascali was chunked down so heavily. Yes, the damage output from Asuba at this point in the game is quite high, but still, he is a Maokai with 3 armor items. You kind of expect him to survive a little bit longer as a Abyssal Voyage is being used. I think this is for, once again, trying to find Pascali here. The Lantern is available, but can he click on it? No, the body block and the stuns was just too much for Pascali's Raccoon, as right now, Asuba is trying to fight or look for another fight. They are dancing around the Baron. Are they gonna fight? Are they gonna go in, or are they gonna go out? They're gonna go in random here, trying to engage, and Raw Rush uses the cleanse once again. That does mean that, yes, you have used a very important ultimate, but the cooldown from the Glacial Tomb isn't really high. Right now, Isuba looking towards that Baron.
It almost went bad there for Chesky, but he still has his defensive item there to fall back upon to make sure that once he pops that, he gets healthy. And Asuba is just looking for this fight, but Raccoon is fighting them over the Baron, trying to poke them out, and they don't feel safe to go for this Baron anymore, so they're just peeling off. Yeah, I mean, to touch upon your point, 3 armor items seems safe, but Varus does so much magical damage, definitely with the on-hit Varus build and he's going for. And then you still have Lissandra dealing magic damage. You have the armor shred that's picked up by as well as Jarvan as well as Renekton with those black cleavers and just their built-in kit. So that armor isn't really going to do that much, and he really needs to try and finish out a secondary magic resist item, because if he's only falling back upon his boots, he might actually go down in every team fight very fast, as long as he's a sole focus and can't really chain those sap magics together.
And now it's for Raccoon and Asuba. Can they make this game, or can they break this tranquility that has been going around for the game for quite a little while? This has been a quite, I want to say, a lengthy game. Not super impactful, but these fights are every time they're close on the edge. Asuba here looking to push out their vision line even further. They know they have a pushing and a building up mid lane wave. Who got the blue buff?
Oh, it has to be Raresh, because the blue buff didn't go over to Asuba, but I can't really see who picked it up. But it's all about this Baron, so let's see the fight.
Yeah, let's see how this fight will go. Pascali getting a little bit chunked down there, but he is super tanky at the moment. The Baron at 6k HP. Is Jeski trying to go for the engage. Kohei with the flank. And Raresh immediately with the Killer Instinct into the front line. That might be a little bit over aggressive here, as Pluxy goes golden as well. Asuba has not lost a single member, but they are shredding through to Raccoon. Raccoon's Raresh goes golden, but can he actually survive here? He has no more means of escaping, and only Kohei and S1D are surviving at the moment. TP's in base, and this will this will be game for Asuba. The first game in this best of 3 will go to them, and yes, Asuba played it quite clean, but it looked very strong in this competition.
They played it clean, but I think they were caught out of surprise by Raccoon there, and I think they're looking towards the game plan. Raccoon can still switch it up, and those team fights where they're ahead but actually start to lose are beacons of hope for Raccoon to pick it up in the second game, because if they draft more towards those team fights instead of the pick comp we saw now, didn't really work out, that early game pick style, but if they go for those team fights, they might actually have a way back into this best of 3, because it's all still to play for. You're 1-0 down, but it's just up to you to shore up those weaknesses and attack Asuba next game. I want to see more action, and I want to see them draft a better fighting comp, because that seems to be working for them.
And I tend to 100% agree with you on that one, Dino, because yes, Raccoon's composition didn't look bad, but the way they're trying to fight and the way they're coming into this game, they really want to make sure that their team does everything well in these fights and that they can fight in choke points. I would maybe even swap out something like the Lee Sin. So let's see how that will actually go into the second game. Talking about second game, we're going to take a small break, but don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with this best out of 3, guys. So see you in the next one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the European Master Plains. What you just saw was Asuba taking the first game in a best of 3 towards its play-in spot, not towards a play-in spot, but towards that spot to the European Masters. So they only need one more win. Well, that was a hefty sentence. My name is Exodus. I'm still joined here by Dino as we are going into the second game of Isuba versus Raccoon in the knockout stage. And I don't know how you feel about the first one, Dino, but I think Raccoon kind of needs to switch up their game plan.
It came to us in the middle of the game when we saw this LeBlanc and Lissin trying to keep going for those same plays, trying to get LeBlanc far enough ahead to actually impact those team fights. But I think if they switch it up a little bit, if they put Pascali back on one of those brawlers that can actually have a bigger damage share in those fights, they might actually have an upper hand on Isuba in those team fights, because Isuba really didn't look that clean in certain fights they had. But they're happy to take those fights. We're going into this game, and Asuba picks red side again. It's what we expected. We were talking about it a little bit. You win on that red side. You see that draft plan from Raccoon on blue side, and you're just looking at Raccoon. They just lost the game. It's like, okay, do it again. We can match this. We can take this. So it's up to Raccoon to actually switch it up. Maybe not go for your 2v2 mid jungle 2v2 so early in the draft, but save those picks for a little bit later and put Pascali on something that can fight alongside with you. Because apparently one thing never changes with Raccoon, and that's that they're gonna fight you at every single moment of the game.
And I actually love that you start talking about mid jungle 2v2 from Raccoon, because it's something that they are known and even notorious for, but it's not something we saw the previous game. It was more focused around the enemy jungler. It was more focused around a Jarvan continuously taking those objectives and also out farming the Lee Sin. So as soon as Asuba gets a lead, let me phrase it differently. Asuba knows how to get the lead from literally minute 1. They know how to do it. They do it consistently, and they take you away from that one. So they say, okay, now we make the plays into the mid game. The few chances that Raccoon had every time, it was because they won a fight. So they played the fight perfectly. They won it, and then they did a macro play, which was kind of questionable often. Going for the dragon, going for the baron. I sometimes call them Hail Mary plays, but they're not that far out. You can just go for something else and it will be just as effective sometimes.
Yeah, and Jeski is one of the best players of Asuba. We've seen this time and time again. He takes control of the early game. In the mid game, he sometimes seems to fall off a little bit, and their game plan isn't that clear. We saw that in this game as well. In the mid game, they were diving inside the enemy base when they could have just set up side waves and played it a little bit slower. So I'm really looking towards this pick and ban for Raccoon to not instantly lock in their jungle, but actually make sure Ploxy has a can approach the jungle for them.
I think our connection might have dropped just for a second, but don't worry, guys. We are still here as we're going to the pick and ban. First ban Raccoon, and immediately means that we do see the same game plan from Asuba, or sorry, from Raccoon. This is our last game. I'm kind of hoping that either they switch up the jungler or either they switch up the mid lane. I do believe the LeBlanc was actually a fine pickup, so I'm kind of hoping for something else besides the Lee Sin. Yes, the Lee Sin is pretty powerful, but there are other junglers out there which actually could be able to contest a bit further.
Yeah, the Lee Sin is powerful in the early game, and we're having some technical difficulties. We ourselves don't really know what you're seeing on your end. We know what we're not seeing on our end, but we're sure the producers are trying to fix this for us. If we pull it back up, apparently there was also an empty ban, so it's not only us that are making slight mistakes. What we see now is they're going for exactly the same pick and ban phase. They don't want to face these untraditional bot lanes. Talia, Ziggs taking away from the pictures. They can be flexed from the jungle to bot for Talia and Ziggs from the mid to bot. So they're taking those away. Syndra is taken away. So they're going for kind of the same plan, but I expect them to switch it up once the picks roll in, and I expect Raccoon to actually take some different picks in the beginning.
Okay, I'm kind of asking our producers what the third ban is. Might be something like Renekton. I think if you're Raccoon, you kind of want to ban it to Renekton. First pick here for Raccoon. Are they going to go for that typical set play, or do they really want something along like the jungler, the mid laner? It depends on what Raccoon wants to do. They have the opportunity
I would
right
say
now.
locking set. Do it. Give Pascali that set. You're on blue side. It's normally your game plan. I know that they diverged from it because they lost the last game. Okay, they're going for the Renekton, which is actually for Raccoon a flex pick because Cole has piloted the Renekton in the mid lane in this tournament. So it's another one of those picks. It can go top, it can go mid, but I like what I'm seeing now more. It gives the set away to Asuba though, and Asuba really loves this champion because they also flex it into 3 already. So the draft is already different, and that's what I like to see because Raccoon really needs to spice it up now.
Yeah, they're trying to spice it up. I mean, it does give some more room for Raccoon. So you can actually lock in your mid laner here, maybe go again for something like LeBlanc or like the Lee Sin. Okay, this will probably be locked in. I think it is still hovering, but you should log this in as Raccoon because you want to, again, go for those flanks. You want to make sure that you get into the backline with LeBlanc and blow up this Varus.
If they lock it in, though, the Renekton flex is already over, and they go for it. So now we know that there is only one option left. I mean, Renekton jungle really isn't a thing, even though someone in solo queue might try to convince you otherwise. So we have a Renekton probably going to the top lane, maybe the AD carry position, but that's really fishing. So we have top lane Renekton, probably LeBlanc mid, and then we're looking at the other side. They went for that Varus again, taking it away from RH, giving it to Danny, and we see them just run it back. Raccoon is comfortable in their draft plan, and they were like, okay, last game was a hiccup, but we can pull off this LeBlanc Nisina. We're just gonna run it back straight at you, do a little bit some things different in the early game, and make sure that we win it through this way.
I would actually love to see a little bit more of aggressive AD carry here from Raccoon, something that can actually fight sooner and spike a little bit faster. So you have the Varus. I don't actually know if Rarash plays Lucian, but Lucian here combined with something more aggressive, or combined with something that say, hey, we're going for poke lane, we're going for a lane that actually might scale from 1 or 2 items, and taking away the tempo from Asuba, because if you do that, Asuba's composition, besides from the Lissandra, is not super at stopping tempo plays from what Raccoon has at the moment.
Rarish hasn't played Lucian in recent history, competitive at least. He might have in solo queue. I like the Jarvan takeaway here. So Echo is one of the most played junglers from Jesky, gets taken away, and they pinch the Jarvan out of that pool as well because Asuba locked in that Lissandra for that Lissandra LeBlanc matchup, and they didn't really lock in their jungler, but they're saving it for their last pick actually. So now it's up to Raccoon to get a good bot lane with what's left. But the most played champs, like the only champs Rarish played up until the last game where he locked in at Kai'Sa, are already banned away. I like the Nautilus, but what AD carry are you picking? That's actually the real question here.
Yeah, you still have a final pick, Raccoon. Are they going to surprise us with something we haven't seen? An MF is still open. It can be played. It does fit well into this composition. I'm still wanting. I'm literally on the edge of the seat here, Dino. What are they gonna pick?
I think MF is maybe a little bit too much early game for this competition.
Is it though? I think
well, Raccoon likes your idea, and they're going all in on that early game to mid game team fights. Which, to be fair, Raccoon looked way better on than Asuba in the last game. So, yeah, I mean, you're going for it. Nautilus MF bot lane. It's everything on the line, and then ooh. That's actually a great pickup. Jesky has had an Olaf game. He looked very good on it. He has proactive counter jungling with that champion. He easily takes all the objectives. And against this team, they really try to set up a team fight in such a way that you have LeBlanc on the flank, maybe Renekton coming from behind, Cole looking to peel between those two, trying to kick someone in, and then you have Nautilus engaged with the CC, and you have MF ulti. Olaf really doesn't care about all of that. He just pops his ultimate, runs at your AD carry, and Rarish can't stand still to actually cast his ulti as long as he's far enough ahead to just kill Jesky running in.
That does mean that Raccoon here will actually be able to snowball quite heavily. So they are picking full early game on with maybe a LeBlanc as an exception. She only does really need to lose Echo to try and proc Danny. So if Raccoon wins the early game and they get the snowball, this might be a very quick game. But it's a snowball. It's a tempo that they need to consistently hold and need to make bigger and bigger at a certain point until Asuba bursts. If Asuba is able to stall that one, they actually have a shot here. But the one saving grace from Raccoon is, as we said already, if you look at the late game, Raccoon does so well at these mechanical outplays in team fights, and with the team fight heavy comp they have, if they can pick a fight in the late game, where yes, they might not be at the same power level as Asuba, but they do the fight, they execute it well, they can actually win. So it's, I want to say, almost a role reversal as last game, but still, Raccoon here, it's go home. It's go hard, go very hard, or go home.
Yeah, it's not go home just yet. I mean, we saw it last game. Even when I thought in this game maybe you need to throw in the towel, they never do. They fight you over everything and actually come up ahead of you in a lot of those fights. The thing about MF is, it used to be a very early game oriented carry, but nowadays you actually scale way harder of your crit chance as with your ulti as well. So they actually pick up a lot of crit items and become a force to be reckoned with in the late game if they get that early lead. But it's all about those junglers again. I mean, I'm starting to sound like a broken record over here, but if you look at Ploxy, look at Jiski, Ploxy went for that first pick scene in the jungle again. They went for that LeBlanc mid again. They're basically running the same 2v2, and they're saying against Isuba, okay, last game was a fluke. We're going to use this game to actually get ahead, make this comp work, and make sure that you have to adjust your pick and ban strategy for the next game, because we're going to a game 3 with this comp.
Before we head into the game, I want to ask you one question, Dino. Raccoon or Asuba here? Which one are you gonna call?
I'm just gonna call it for the fans, and I want to see Raccoon pick this one up.
Oh, fan
because
service,
I want
okay.
to go for that third game. The Asuba Raccoon going 1-1 would be insane, because then we'll actually probably see an entirely different draft next game. If I look over to the comms though, and if we saw last game, Raccoon really needs to get ahead early, because if they fall too far behind, I actually don't like their chances, even though they team fight so well. So I'm looking towards you, Ploxy. Please, for the love of the fans watching at home, try to get this early game on your back. Don't get invaded so hard, and then maybe we can go to a game 3 after this.
I actually also want to say Raccoon. Just because of all the reasons you said already, and I do like the animal that is Raccoon, because I think it's a cool animal. I know it's not really native to Europe, so, and it is kind of a pest in the Americas. But hey, still, yeah, I think it's cool. They always look like little thieves with the way their fur goes black around their eyes. As we're going into the second game here, the best of 3, Raccoon versus Isuba. If Raccoon loses this one, they're knocked out, and Isuba will actually advance into the EU Masters.
Yeah, we're looking towards